So if it's your time and it's my time, doesn't that make it our time? Hey, there's no birthday party in here for me. All right, back with another Q&A, but a recap before we get started on the Q&A. Here's my day so far. Up at 6, reading this book called Where the Crawdads Sing. It's very good, won a bunch of awards, I think. 7 o'clock, I helped my wife with PT. She just had a major surgery procedure, and the next 6 weeks are gonna be a lot of PT, so that was 7 to 8-ish. Got on the bike, 20 miles, nothing fast, kind of slow. Then had a little food. I'm doing this film. Then I've got to go to somebody's house, help out a friend, make a stop at the grocery store, take a conference call from the van, come back, make another film, do another conference call, and then like at 6-ish, I got to start prepping for the class that I'm teaching tomorrow, which is the second part of the class that I'm teaching that I taught yesterday. Because one of the questions here coming up is about something about real work. And so I just want to give you an idea of like what today is for me, which is kind of what I would just call an average day. And the whole thing is brought to you by Goo. With caffeine, no, I'm kidding. I use Goo, but I have no affiliation with them. I just thought it would be kind of funny. And I like saying Goo as much as possible. Thank you so much for sending in the questions. I've got enough questions here for 5 more Q&As, so I'm not going to get through all these. I'm trying to do 10, trying to keep it at a certain time length, time something, whatever. I feel a bit off today. I feel a little bit limey in the head today, so I'm a bit slow. And I want to say thanks for sending these in. And I'm just one person with one opinion. I think my opinion rubs some people the wrong way. It's probably why it's a valid opinion. I think most opinions are going to rub somebody the wrong way, especially in the climate that we're living in today, which is getting warm here. It's a beautiful day in New Mexico. Question number 1. Wait, no, I'm going to start this. I went back to front, people. I went back to front. I got a question here at the beginning. That's a photography related question that I think is a really good one. And I think I have an answer. Number 1, what is your thought? I think they meant thought. What is your thought on using visual patterns, frames, lines, color to make better compositions? Well, that's question number 1. That's a good one. I'm all for using patterns, frames, lines, and colors to make better pictures. Who am I to discriminate? That's my wife just wandering through the background. I just told her I was going to make a film in the van, which meant stay away from the van. And now she's lurking outside like Bigfoot under this surgical haze kind of thing. So it's very odd. It's kind of off-putting. She's wandering off. I mean, she's on medication. She could be in the next county before I get done with this film. I'm fine with that. It's called adventure. So yes, I'm all for using patterns and lines and whatever else. But here's the thing. When you make pictures long enough and you go into the field frequently enough and you look for your style of pictures enough, you don't have to think about any of those things. I am a believer, and this might sound completely like BS, but I believe in it. When you do this enough, you get into situations where you can feel photographs coming. You know that the ingredients that are required to make your style of photograph are present. It is then up to you to be able to put yourself in the right position on that chessboard while you're waiting for foregrounds and midgrounds and backgrounds and the right light to all come together. That is not something that you are thinking about step by step. You get to the level where you've done this on a daily basis so frequently that it is an intuitive action to feel the fact that there's a target-rich environment for your style of photograph and to feel and anticipate those ingredients coming together, and then you have to be good enough to get it in the blink of a shutter. That's what good documentary photography is. So all of those components that you're mentioning become part of these photographs, but they're not consciously thought about because there is no time to think about it. You react. If you've ever seen films of a good doc shooter working, you see how quickly and how fast and also how tunnel vision they are in terms of watching them make slight movements and adjustments to get the framing and the images the way they want, their composition. That is everything you're talking about, but done at a level and so frequently that it's become second nature. I think today we spend so much time after the photographs are made trying to promote and get something from these pictures instead of going back in the field and spending time. I think there's a lot of folks, especially in the online photo space now, there's a lot of folks that if they dropped off the face of the earth for 10 years and went out and shot every day for 10 years without sharing everything and being sort of online presence, there's a couple of people out there that I think would be really good photographers. I don't think they'll ever get there in that space now because this part of it, this YouTube thing and the social thing and the website thing and the fame thing and the attention thing and the branding thing and the partnership thing, it just sucks the life out of you. It just sucks too much away from you for you to ever become really good. That's a sad, harsh reality. If you're pouring your life into online photo community stuff, my guess is you will never truly be a great photographer because it's too hard, it's too difficult. And these two things are so diametrically opposed to making great photography. It's a weird catch-22. I totally get it because if you can make a living as an online photographer, that's kind of a cool thing. It sure beats a million other jobs out there. So I get why people want to do this. But to try to do that at the same time you're trying to be a great photographer, I don't know anyone who's that good. Sadly, I'm nowhere close to it. I gave up photography a long time ago, man. I'm ahead of the game. Okay, that was a good photo question for number 1. I'm just getting warmed up here, man. I don't want to throw the heat. Okay. Let's see here. Doesn't that stuff give you brain damage? Only if you do it every day for a month. I'm planning a car trip from Salt Lake to Ohio for late July. It's going to be smoking hot, my friend. Do you have any favorite resources for route planning or detour picking? I could do the driving part in 2 days, but maybe it's more fun to explore a bit and take 5 days to get there. What's the best way to plan an adventure? John C. There will be paddle boards on board. Good on ya. I love paddleboarding. Is fun. I do like paddleboarding. I say go for it. I don't use any route planning software, but the one piece of advice I will give you is at all cost, for the love of God, please avoid the interstate highway system. It is the most soulless transportation system the United States has ever developed. The interstates are embarrassing. It's everyone going 90 miles an hour because everybody thinks they're important and have to be there in 2 days when they should spend 10 days getting there. Avoid the interstates. The food is horrible. The lodging is horrible. When I'm on the interstates, I cringe at what like Europeans think when they come here and they pull off innocently to fill their microcar with gas for a fraction of what they're doing at home. And they go, God, this country, it's amazing. They have subsidized gasoline to fool the population into thinking that's what the normal prices are. And then they go to get something to eat. And you're looking at like a Stop and Go or somewhere and like hot dogs on those conveyor belts. And you're like, this is kind of less than optimal food. And then you go for lodging and it's like, oh, here's $150 for this awful hotel that's 12 feet from the slow lane on the interstate. It's gross. Take back roads. Even if you could only go half the distance that you were planning on going, take back roads. And oh, by the way, pull over and talk to random people. If you're in a small enough town, here's a really fun trick that I've been doing for years. Go into the tiniest town and ask who the mayor is. And then just drop in on the mayor unannounced. Knock on the door and say, look, I'm driving across the country. I don't know anything about your community and your town. I heard you're the mayor. What's shaking, dude? Or ma'am? I've done this a bunch of times. It's a blast. I've had lunch with mayors all over the country who have just said, hell, son, come on in. And then you're part of the tribe immediately. If you want to know the pulse of America, it ain't on the interstate. It's on the back roads, people. That's my only piece of advice. Question number 3. This is a long one, a really long one. A little background story. I was just recently reminded of Joel Meyerowitz and his work. So I immediately ordered a couple of books. They also had Susan Meiselas on sale and some kind of affordable version of Peter Beard's The End of the Game. Yay. By the way, Meyerowitz, Meiselas, Beard, can't go wrong with all 3 of those. I have an interesting Susan Meiselas story for you. Thanks, Dan, for your photo book recommendations. Huge inspiration. Then I went to Mr. Meyerowitz's website to learn a bit more about him. He seems to have some sort of online classes available, pre-recorded via Masters of Photography. Now, I'm not a fan of online teaching, but who knows? Maybe these video classes could be interesting. Luckily, they offer free samples. So I clicked on the sign up for free lesson button, and what do I see? A horrible stock photo in a model shooting a 1970s Praktica SLR, and nobody told her that the shutter release is in the front, not on top of the camera. My conclusion, I'm never going to sign up for the freebie, let alone consider paying for their online masterclass. Now, of course, these big name photographers are not themselves planning, organizing, and marketing these classes, but man, if I knew any of them personally, I would tell them, my friend, I think you should be more careful when choosing your online teaching partner. So, terrible marketing is not their fault, but it's less money for them if the terrible marketing makes potential customers think, geez, if their attention to detail in the marketing department is so low, I wonder what the actual content is. Now, my actual question, I told you there was a question in here. How come they're so cheap? How much more would it be to take even remotely relevant pictures decorating their advertisements? I'm going to skip through this, but how on earth can you advertise a Learn from the True Master Photography course and using basically cheap stock photos? They might not supply with something like, we've had hundreds of happy customers and nobody's ever complained on such a small detail, but hey, would it hurt to pay a little attention to details no one's going to notice? It seems that today the only people who care about professionalism are the ones who are not actually trying to sell anything. End of rant. Thanks, Dan, your no-nonsense approach. So the short answer to that, Marcus, is I don't know. I mean, Joel Meyerowitz has a long, long, long career in photography. Susan Meiselas does as well. She's done some remarkable books in the last 30 years. And also, if you want an interesting story about a woman in journalism, check out the story of her going to Nicaragua during the 70s to cover the war. Now, I don't know about all the online stuff. COVID has shifted everything. The state of the professional photography industry is not good. It's been in decline for decades. This is like a thing that no one wants to talk about, but it's true because everyone's trying to hold up the facade of the professional photo industry. The professional photo industry is considered mature. It's been mature for decades. It's getting smaller. It's getting more difficult to become a photographer. It's getting more difficult to maintain a career in photography. The value of photography down. For the most part, there's a few very, very small exceptions in the very high levels of fine art photography and also paparazzi. Paparazzi photography is still the most valuable photography in the world today, regardless of what the art world wants to tell you. The real money is for people spilling out stuff for celebrities. Meyerowitz has an amazing career. You cannot deny what he's done, so I wouldn't be distracted by something like that. To your point, I don't know if he's the one marketing and planning these workshops or if he's just attached his name to some other thing. Same for Susan Meiselas, and Peter Beard sadly is no longer with us, but talk about an eccentric dude who lived a life smoked it down to the marrow, people. We smoked it to the filter, didn't we? I love that line from The Town. By the way, The Town, one of the best Ben Affleck things ever, but just such a simple, great movie. Story, script, characters, acting, and I forget her name, the female lead, who's awesome. I can't remember her name. She's like, we smoked it to the filter. I love that expression. So all of these people have insane track records. If you take a class from them and can't learn something, it's probably on you because they have a wealth of information to divulge. I'll give you an example. When I was in, let's see, what year was this? 1995, I made my first digital magazine portfolio. Let me repeat that for you haters out there. 1995, I made an oversized 3-story, written, designed, photographed by yours truly, magazine, oversized, laminated, bound, and I shipped those out to all the clients I wanted to work for. National Geographic, Nat Geo, Stern, Perry Match, New York Times Mag, Life, all these people that I thought would never hire me. I also sent it to a couple of photographers that had been very influential in me getting started. Among them, Susan Meiselas. Did not know her. She came to University of Texas one day right before I graduated. She gave a talk on a movie called Pictures from a Revolution, which was about her returning to Nicaragua to find some of the families and the people that she had photographed in the 70s during the war. And she came and spoke, and I was like, I want to be her. I want to do what she's doing. She's amazing. And I sent her a portfolio. I sent her one of these things, sight unseen, unannounced, in the U.S. postal system. That's how we rolled back then, people. There was no phone. There was no internet, email. I had no computer. Bang this thing out, put it in the mail. Lo and behold, weeks go by. These things start coming back. One of them that comes back is Susan Meiselas. And inside is a long handwritten letter of her analysis of my work. And it was honest, truthful, positive, optimistic, suggestive, all the things you want, giving me little pieces of direction, giving me encouragement, but not too far, not blowing smoke, saying you're really good, because I wasn't, but saying you don't have to think about this, you should think about that. I was like, wow, that's incredible. She sent it back. She took the time to send it back. Put it in the mail. I didn't include return postage, people. She had to brave the New York City Postal Department and get this thing back to me. That's a professional. That's someone, by the way, 10 years later, I run into her in New York City at an event. I'm giving a talk. She walks in. I'm shocked to see her, number one, and she remembered me. And it wasn't like, oh yeah, I remember you. It was like, I actually do remember you, and I remember that portfolio. That's a professional. That is an intelligent person who is far more than someone who presses the button. And if you look at her book, Carnival Strippers, you look at Nicaragua, you look at the Kurds, those are master classes in themselves to do projects like that. So those people are gold mines. Don't be put off by something small. Question number 4. I think this is 4. I don't even know. Another question from me to you, not photo related. Through some blurb newsletter, I was directed to a profile of yours. Uh-oh, trouble. Which reads, Daniel Milnor once worked as both a fragrance model and a hot tub installer. Could you elaborate more on those 2 jobs? Oh, those are just a couple of the jobs I've had in my life. The first job I had in my life was picking up nails. I also had a job shooting prairie dogs once when I was a little kid. I did that for several years. Pretty darn good at it. Don't mean to brag, but you know, it was in the rural Wyoming. That's what happened in those days. Yeah, so in high school, I worked for a hot tub company out of Texas. Went to high school in Texas, and I was a hot tub installer. And the owners of the company, their son was my boss, and he was so cool. He was this like kind of guy, kind of a refuge from the 70s. He had like velvet posters on the walls of his house of like Hendrix and all this stuff. And we would go out. He drove a hot rod. We had this work truck. He and I would go out and we would install hot tubs. It was hilarious. It was also Texas in the middle of the summer. And I was little. I was small. I'm still relatively small, but I was pretty small. And so they would wedge me into these like cubby holes underneath decks in Texas in the middle of the summer with PVC cleaner and glue. And I would come out from underneath those decks so high on glue that it probably took a decade off my life. And I was probably making less than minimum wage. And it was brutally hot. And so I was like, you know what? I don't think this is really a career for me. The other job that you mentioned, the fragrance model, this is actually even more pathetic and horrible, but funny. So my sister was doing a modeling job for, I forget, some fashion line. And my mother and I was probably in like middle school or maybe early high school. My mom and I go to pick her up, and we're standing outside this place where they're doing the shoot. And I'm just standing there. And this woman comes out of the women's restroom, and she looks out of the women's restroom and sees me. And I kind of was like freaked out, like, oh my God, it looks like I'm standing outside the women's restroom, looking in the women's restroom, which was not what I was doing. And that's why I thought she was looking at me like, you perv, and was going to come over and yell at me. And so I was like, and like I said, I'm like early high school. I'm a total nerf bag. I'm terrified. And so she comes over and goes, I'll give you, I forget what it was, X amount of money to be a model. And I was like, whoa. And at the time, it was like, wow, that's a lot of money. So I was like, no problem. And I did this modeling campaign for her and this clothing brand. And then somehow my sister roped me into this concept that at the mall, there was this job called a fragrance model. And how this did not set red flags up in my head, I have no idea. I had to wear a tuxedo. I had to go to the mall, and I had cologne of the day. They would like hand me this cologne, and I had to wait for men to walk into the mall, into sort of my trap, my lair, and then I would literally kind of like jump out before they could say, get away from me, or take a swing at me, and I would spray them with this cologne. If you tried this today, you get flat out get smoked at the mall. It's amazing I did not get mangled or smoked at the mall. I would literally like jump out and spray these guys. These are like Texas cowboy guys that are at the mall because their wife wanted to go there. I would spray them and then hope to God they didn't massacre me, and then try to convince them that they should buy whatever this fragrance was. I did it for 2 days. And I was like, I will die if I keep doing this job. So I got out. And then I don't know what I got the next job after that, but it was probably equally as sucky. And then I got a job at this student newspaper, and the rest is history. Number 5, what is the most memorable nonverbal compliment you have ever received? Have I already done this question? What is the most memorable nonverbal compliment you've ever received? I have no idea. I can think of like verbal compliments I received. I got a compliment from a legend from National Geographic once at night at a party at a huge bonfire. That was a fun story. That was Bill Allard, by the way. And he said something very peculiar to me that would make sense on a photographer to photographer basis. But nonverbal compliment, I guess the nonverbal compliment is when you are somewhere with your camera and you are documenting something that may or may not show the people you are photographing in a good light, right? They could be doing something illegal. They could be doing something less than savory. They could be doing something, but you have spent enough time with them that you have their trust, and something will happen where you are on the precipice of getting access or seeing or witnessing something, and you're kind of hesitating right there with your camera on the fence, waiting, is this going to be okay? Is this okay? Am I going to get killed? Whatever. And they just nod, or they do something like this. I've had a cop lift up the police tape at a murder scene, a multiple homicide, a guy that he had seen me circling the city at night, like Night Stalker, that movie on Netflix. That was me. I would go to South Phoenix after my shift was over with my police scanner, and I would pull over and I would wait for the carnage. And then I would just go out all night and I would photograph this stuff. The paper would never touch it, but I was like addicted to it. And it was like, you know, domestic violence and homicides and drug busts and everything. And the cops eventually got to know who I was. And I came to a quadruple homicide one night, and I was very early on the scene, and the cop that was in front sort of protecting the crime scene recognized me, and he didn't say anything. He nodded and he lifted up the police tape and let me get in and shoot, and it was gnarly. Guy took a full 6-round, 6-shooter, 44 mag, point blank in the chest. Blew him through where he was standing, blew him across a hallway through a wall, and I was in there on the crime scene, and it was pretty gnarly, pretty. But like, you're framing it, so it doesn't feel gnarly at the time because you're looking down and you're composing everything that you're seeing and trying not to get in the crime scene. There was blood everywhere, and so that was one of the hard parts, was trying to get close enough to not get in the blood, because you don't want to leave tracks and prints, and then you basically ruin the crime scene, and then they're never going to let you in there again. Question number 6 is very short and sweet. Can you review my work? The short answer is no. I just don't have time. I gave you a synopsis of my day earlier. I am at full capacity right now. I can't really do anything else. I get a lot of people reaching out saying, hey, will you take a look at this? Will you take a look at that? I just don't. It's not that I don't want to. I just don't have time. Number 7. When you're in the field working on a project, do you use any, quote, cheat codes? I've seen videos about the Sunny 16 method for exposures and zone focusing to ensure you don't miss a shot, especially when shooting film. I find myself, when using my film camera, taking very long time to get the focus just right, and oftentimes I'm missing shots because of it. Thank you for your time and effort. I do not use cheat codes. There is simply no time. The Sunny 16 rule that you're talking about is completely valid for basic exposure levels when you're shooting film or digital. I was given the Sunny 16 rule the very first day I ever got a real newspaper assignment when I was in school. I'd had assignments prior to that. Before I went to school, I was working at newspapers. But Rudolfo Gonzalez, the photographer at San Antonio College, handed me a screw mount Nikkor 35 and a piece of paper that had the Sunny 16 rule on it, and he handed me an assignment and said, you got to go shoot this for the paper. And I literally went into the assignment and I was like, okay, inside 3 stops, overhead lighting 2 more, and I used that Sunny 16 rule for a year. I memorized it, and I didn't have to carry the paper around. There is simply no time for this stuff in the field. If you're screwing with focus or your exposure, you have to get more accomplished with your equipment. You have to get faster and better. If you are thinking about your equipment, if you're thinking about menus, if you're thinking about your camera in the field, like, oh my God, I use an M6, I use an M6, this is amazing, it's an M6, and you're looking at it, no one cares, no one ever will care. And if you're thinking about this, you're not thinking about that. Out there, that thing, whatever that is that you want, you, follow me here, you, that, together, pros, shun, to push away. God, if anyone gets that movie reference, shun, to push away, you will not win anything other than my affection. So the thing about shooting in the field, the great thing about committing to something, an M6, an M4, a Hasselblad, whatever camera it is you want to use, you commit to it and you get so familiar with it that you do not have to talk about it or think about it. When you're walking down the street, your hands are moving the shutter speed and the aperture based on the exposure around you. so that when the time comes, it's just bam, bam, bam. That's it. If you get to a scene and go, I got to take a meter reading, and I got to look down at my aperture to figure out where I'm at, and I got to do my shutter speeds, and now I got to get my focus ring. It's gone. It was gone 5 minutes ago. It's laughing at you. It's down here on the street. It's having a bagel, and it's laughing at you. Cream cheese and salmon and lox and everything, and it's like you have to be really fast. So it's about prep. Leica shooters will pre-focus, right, or zone focus. I never really did that. I like focusing, and it's fast once you get used to that system. But your exposure has to be intuitive and set as you're going. You can't go from open shade to direct sun and not make changes on your camera, even if you're not shooting. You have to be prepped far ahead of time. It's actually fun. It shouldn't be viewed as like a chore or something difficult. It's not. You're talking about an aperture and a shutter ring. They only go so far. The dial only goes... So you should be able to do all of this in the dark as well. So just based on feel of where the shutter speed dial is and the aperture ring, you should be able to rack all the way to one side, count the clicks, and know where you are without looking at it. Because if you have to look down every time and do it, it's too slow and you're going to miss things. You're going to miss, and you're going to be sad, and there'll be candlelight vigils, and your friends will come and they'll go, I remember when he was happy before this goddamn photography thing, and now he's not happy anymore. He's never satisfied. Yeah, and your friends are like, I thought I wanted to travel with him, but now I realize that's the last thing I want to do. He's difficult to be around. I've heard all of that many times. Okay. Hey, Daniel, what's the definition of real work for you? Curious whether you feel the creation of rich media where tools and technology... Wait a minute, this was question 8. Technology are so readily available and enticing to create new experiences for viewers. Can you replace the static printed photograph? As a creator, you are exploring all of this through your short films or videos, storytelling using stills, moving picture, poetry, music, written word, sound effects, etc. So many of the past greats like Eggleston Kline experimented with film. Was that an evolution to their craft or just exploring another separate medium? I'd be interested to hear your take on this. Yeah, film is a weird thing. For years, I would get asked to do motion, and I said, I don't really do motion. I'm a still photographer. Motion is another language. I don't really know that language, and I'm not really interested in learning it. It wasn't until Blurb came to me, and it was very apparent to me that this would become part of my job, and it was a responsibility that I had to learn how to do, at least to a certain degree. I don't think I'm ever going to be a great filmmaker. I'm starting at 52 years old. That's probably not the best protocol to do that. I still feel like there's a million things in still photography I haven't explored and haven't figured out how to do. I think still photography takes a lifetime to really master well. I didn't get close to doing that. But film is interesting, and I think all of these names that you mentioned, these are people that came to film for different reasons. I'm sure some of them got commissioned to make films. Some came because it was another medium to explore. Some came because they wanted to be challenged. There's a million ways and reasons why we get sucked into these different things. But I have to say, filmmaking is a really remarkable experience because it is, in my opinion, the polar opposite of being a still photographer. When I'm in the field making stills, everything lives and dies in the field. I either get it or I don't. And the vast majority of the time, I don't. And I have to live with that fact that I didn't get it, or I got a version of something that's just not good enough. With filmmaking, what lives and dies is in the editing bay. It's casting an incredibly wide net of content in the field and then coming back and making sense of it post-shoot. That is very counterintuitive to how I've lived my life. So it's been an extreme learning curve. What I'm realizing is what I thought I wanted to do with filmmaking and all the sort of design of the film itself, what I will call the gimmicks or the cinematic things or the tricks or the transitions or the bumpers and the motion graphics and things, I don't want it. I go back and I look at films from the 1960s, and to me, they are better than what we're doing now in a lot of ways. I just saw a clip this morning from the movie Grand Prix from 1966 with James Garner racing through the streets of Monaco. And I can't remember who's the cinematographer on that film. I should look it up. But the camera angles and the view, and it's just remarkable. I was like, God, that's as good or better than anything we're doing today without all the drone shots and all the kind of stuff that is like candy that lures you into thinking that what you're making is good when in actuality you probably should have just spent more time writing the script or, in my case, learning how to act. learning how to be better on camera, that kind of thing. So filmmaking is fascinating. I don't see it going away from me ever. I think I'll be doing this the rest of my life. I don't think I'll be doing YouTube, but I think I'll be doing this on my own for fun and just putting out short films and like emailing them to my friends or whatever to see what happens. But that's a really good question. Okay, I'm gonna stop this sucker because I'm back. When's the last time you watched a really good 1980s martial arts movie? Anything with Michael Dudikoff or Sho Kosugi or Bruce Lee even, or early Chuck Norris where he was like hairy, like in Enter the Dragon where he dies in the Rome Coliseum because Bruce Lee's like, I'm here and I'm gonna whoop some ass. That movie changed my life, by the way. I don't know how many times I attacked my family members after seeing that, but it was just not enough. Okay, number 9. I've got an interesting question for you, Dan. Should I trust my instinct that a photo isn't good if it doesn't look good really small? What's the saying? I'm gonna butcher this, but this is it. If you can't make it good, make it big. And if you can't make it big, make it in color. That's the scam of photography right there, right? When digital printing technology got to the point where you could throw a 35mm image into a Durst Lambda or a LightJet and you could do wall-size prints, it just changed everything. And you suddenly saw absolute garbage. All right, that was the first. That was internal temperature too high. Allow the camera to cool. So I just put it on the bed in the van. I don't know, I'm gonna back up here. Look, I'm in the van. I can stand up, I can do anything. So when digital printing technology got to the point where we could make enormous wall-size prints, everything changed because people suddenly said, oh my God, it doesn't really have to be that great. If I print it 70 by 9,000, and I hang it, everyone's gonna think it's gorgeous, it's beautiful. So I went to all these shows and exhibitions and museum shows and things like Paris Photo in France where you'd walk in and they're just wall-size mural prints that were so big you had to back up to see them and they just sucked. They just sucked. And the best photo in the whole place that had the biggest crowd was an 8x10 Cartier-Bresson. There was a line to see it and it was only 8x10. So it doesn't have to be good small to be good. It really doesn't. But that's sort of the running joke is, again, if you can't make it good, make it big. Can't make it big, make it in color. I think there is some validity to those kind of weird things. But no, it doesn't matter. Some people turn their images upside down to see if the composition works. Again, you can do that, but I don't think it's essential. All right, last question. For bookmaking, is it preferable to scan 35mm black and white negative or the enlarged silver print from the wet darkroom? Apparently Google says to choose the negative, and I understand the copy-a-copy problem with scanning the enlarged print, but it seems like the print would have its benefits. It's already been dodged and burned. No, I would scan, I mean, you can. Whoa, is that like super dark all of a sudden? Is that still working? Talk to me. Talk to me. Yeah, you know, scan the neg. Just scan the neg one time, dodge it and burn it. It's a lot easier to scan a negative and dodge it and burn it than it is to do in the darkroom. So I would go that route and not worry about scanning prints. I know some people that do that, but even getting a really good flatbed scanner now is not easy. It's really hard. So I don't know even who makes one. I think Epson might make one. Stick to the neg, my friend. All right, that's it for this episode of Q&A. And I think I'm just gonna take a nap maybe after this is over. And I appreciate you tuning in and writing me and sending me these questions. I do. I was pointing. It's my fountain pen, by the way. One of them. I appreciate you sending it. I'm in the dark now, silhouetted. I will be back with more great questions and much appreciated.